Very pleased to be joined here at Blogging the Boys by the one and only, the dashing, the debonair. You know him, you love him. He is preaching the gospel of Mark Trestman. It is Aaron Leming from a variety of places. Aaron, you live all over the internet, serving as a voice for Bears fandom, Bears fans, and that's an intense cross to bear these days, my friend.
Dude, it has been an intense cross to bear being a Bears fan since birth, man. It's funny. We go through the same cycle every offseason where they go out and they make these big moves, and you can't speak negatively at all about the Bears on Bears Twitter during the offseason because they're going to, make the playoffs, win the Super Bowl. They're going to shock everybody. And then here we are going into week 3. They're 0-2, arguably have performed like one of, if not the worst team in football. And now everybody's wondering, like, all right, so what happens next? So yeah, it's the fun cycle that happens every single year for Bears fans, and we just started off a little early this year.
Yeah, see, Cowboys fans kind of get painted as that group when they really aren't. I mean, they're pretty masochistic, but they're also pretty realistic. You know what I mean? Like when their team sucks, like they have no problem kind of saying it out loud. I actually want to develop a habit of asking people this. So you're the first person I'm trying this out on. What is your favorite Bears memory against the Cowboys specifically? Because I have a worst Bears memory from a Cowboys perspective, and I can start there if you need a catalyst. You know what I mean?
So, it's funny because we actually just moved from Dallas like a year ago. I spent like 5 years in Dallas, and obviously the one time that they played there, when the Bears played them in Dallas, they lost. I think it kind of goes back to like the whole thing with the Bears is like probably my favorite memory would be the Josh McCown game.
Right. That's in contention, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of the thing is like, and I'm sure I could probably go back further in the memory bank and pull something else out. But it's like that was the one where it's like the offense clicked. They were still kind of in the playoff race. That was also the year that they went 8-8 and blew it to the Packers in week 17. But that was kind of like that one game where it was like, oh my God, like Mark Trestman's offense might actually work. That was the first time, probably in my lifetime, that the Bears actually had like a legitimately good offense, regardless of who the quarterback was. And obviously we know how that ended, and we know how the Ben Johnson era has started so far. So
yeah, that's whatever it was, like -9 degrees. That was a Monday night game in 2013, and it is forever seared in my mind. Peak Brandon Marshall, peak Alshon Jeffrey. I actually was at and in the crowd for the Monday night game the year before in 2012. That game was not as big of a blowout, but it was similarly not fun. There's nothing worse than the mirage of a game. When you really like feel like, oh, this is a sign of something, and it turns out no, you're just a sucker for buying it at that particular moment in time.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, the Bears have had a lot of those games, and it's funny because that's actually the game that I keep going back to mentally, even this year, where it's like obviously the Cowboys are 1-1, but I feel like in a lot of ways, like you're kind of not that it's going to be remotely the same result. Not saying that by any means, but I do think you could see that kind of offensive shootout where neither one of these teams look like they have much of a defense, and I think you have to go back to that 2013 timeframe when both the Bears and Dallas had awful defenses. I mean, that was the reason that the Bears didn't make the playoffs. I can't really speak to that as much on the Cowboys because I can't remember that far back. But my old boss at the time was actually a Cowboys fan, and I remember telling him, I'm like, man, the Bears are cooked. Like the season's over with, and obviously the game happened. But I think in a lot of ways, there's definitely some parallels in terms of kind of where the teams are at least. Luckily, it's the beginning of the season and not the end, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I suppose that's the silver lining. My first question as it relates to this game is the spirit or disposition that's mostly in the air about Ben Johnson being 0-2, or is it about Matt Eberflus returning? Because I feel like the Matt Eberflus factor isn't really getting a lot of pop right now.
So I think had the Bears gone 1-1, or had they not got blown out this last weekend, I think it would probably be a little bit different of a narrative. But I think there's this kind of here we go again feeling, right? I mean, the expectation with Eberflus as the Bears head coach was never overly high, right? I think that as things progressed, especially last year, I think a lot of people kind of forgot how bad he was in game as a head coach. And, you get Caleb Williams, you get Roma Dunze, you have this big offseason, like I said, the cycle, right? You have this huge offseason,
Right.
all these expectations. So I think had the Bears been playing better over the first 2 weeks of the season, I think that the narrative would definitely be there. But I think, again, as a collective fan base, we like to get over our skis a little bit and, start running our mouths. And then what it comes down to is once you realize like, oh no, we suck again, or we still suck, or whatever the case may be, then it's like all of a sudden, all of those outside distractions, the Justin Fields, the Matt Eberflus, everything else that's going on, Minnesota losing on Sunday
Right.
Night Football, none of that matters because you're looking at it and you're like, okay, they bring in Ben Johnson. This offense is supposed to be better. Caleb Williams is supposed to take a step forward, and yet they just lost 52-24 to the Detroit Lions in a pretty embarrassing fashion. So I think a lot of the focus is more on the negative right now than anything outside.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's a matter of like, it feels like we have to get our house in order before we can, cast the stones, from the glass walls, so to speak. I love Matt Eberflus and I was pumped when he got the job, but I would be lying if I said I thought that that it was ever going to end well, even before, it was clear that it wasn't going to end well. It felt left-footed from the very beginning, but Ben Johnson felt very right-footed. And I know that's why people are down because of the cycle, like you talked about here. What good has there been? I mean, what have been the moments that are okay? Well, it's clearly different than that Eberflus. Like, again, we're 2 games in, and it's an inordinately small sample size. But has there been a moment? Have there been instances where you have said, or someone has said, okay, there is clearly, we're no longer headed due south at the very least.
Yeah, well, I think what this kind of comes down to, and I think it's not so much I don't think a lot of people are super down on Ben Johnson right now. I think it's more of, and again, this is a culmination of, you talk about the Bears going through the same cycle, right? I mean, you're talking about a team that, brought in Jay Cutler and didn't give him any offensive help, right? It took him a few years to get that under control. And then right when he starts to get his footing in Chicago, all of a sudden they fire Lovie Smith and they bring in Mark Trestman. And then, the Jay Cutler thing plays out and they draft Mitchell Trubisky under John Fox's last year. They fire John Fox, bring in Matt Nagy. Then they do the same exact thing with Justin Fields, where Matt Nagy's last year, they draft Justin Fields and then they bring in Eberflus. And then, again, the same cycle. So I think a lot of this kind of comes down to an organizational issue where I think a lot of people are looking at this and they're like, why did they retain Ryan Poles? Not only did they retain Ryan Poles, but they gave him an extension. So I think that you're kind of looking at this roster and it's like, you look at their cap situation this year and next year, they've committed a lot of money to this core of players. And obviously they're counting on Caleb Williams to take the next step. And the book is far from written on that. But I think when you're looking at the team as a whole and you're looking at the Ben Johnson, like on a list of concerns, Ben Johnson is, he's definitely not super high up on the list just because, like you said, it's 2 games into the season. I think when you look at the differences so far, from a roster standpoint, there's different names. They've been playing largely the same. I feel like they gave up in the fourth quarter of week 1. I felt like they gave up in the second half after that whole thing that happened in the first half on that last throw to Isaac Tesla before the touchdown. And it feels like right now they're kind of exercising the demons of the culture that was in Chicago from a roster that frankly knows nothing but losing in Chicago under Ryan Poles. So I think that for the most part, you see the same thing from the players. I think from Ben Johnson's standpoint, obviously they're more aggressive offensively. They're more aggressive in terms of like, we're going to go for it on 4th down. They're 0 for 3 on 4th down so far, which is not great. But you definitely see some of that coming in. But again, I mean, you're looking at a team that's kind of trying to meld into the culture that they want to be and the offense that they want to be. They got 3 new starters on the interior offensive line. Things have not looked good. Caleb Williams looked a hell of a lot better this week than he did last week, but there's still a long way to go, especially when you start comparing everything. So I think that it's, for a lot of people, including myself, you're kind of looking at this like, all right, got to pump the brakes. We got to let this whole thing play out. Going 9-8 or 10-7 and making in the playoffs, like that doesn't need to be a thought process at this point in time. You need to figure out who you can rely on and who's going to be a part of this team moving forward. And I think that's kind of where things are at.
I think that's good perspective. I also think this is a wider philosophical discussion that we don't have time for, but I think it's easier to build the culture when you are a perennial loser. Ben Johnson comes from Detroit. So it's a matter of like, we're no longer going to be that. I would look at Philadelphia as an example. Like, we've never done this before. And now you just establish yourself. Chicago's a rich, and I use the Cowboys as another example, obviously, like NFL, blue blood, Tiffany brand, like icon. And so you're trying to build this new culture while you still have these old heads who are like, oh, but the standard's supposed to be whatever. That standard doesn't exist for places like Detroit or Philadelphia, which is why, you're not living in a shadow, so to speak, which is, certainly the case for Chicago, certainly the case for Dallas, or, at some point in the future, in Kansas City when they're being measured against this run the Chiefs have been on. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of what it sounds like. Rome Odunze finally had kind of a coming out party, like his first one ever, certainly. And it was unfortunate that it came, underneath this just like mountain of an onslaught. But yeah. If the Bears were to win, and they might win this game, what will be the reason, right? Like, what will be the, like, of course they won because this happened? Is it Rome Odunze having a big game? And obviously the reason that is measured with practicality. Obviously, if Caleb Williams threw for 500 yards, that would be the case, but nobody, would bet on that happening necessarily.
Well, so here's the thing. I mean, for the Bears to win games this year, especially in their early going with all the injuries they've had on the defense side of the ball, they're going to have to score on offense. I mean, that's really what this is going to come down to. And it sounds so surface level in saying this, but I mean, their offense is going to have to outscore the Cowboys. And I know that sounds silly, but at the same time, I mean, you're talking about an offense that in week one got off to the hot start in that one drive. And then you look back on it, it's like they had one other drive, which is the end of the drive at the end of the game where they scored another touchdown. And that's kind of been the story so far, where it's like, dude, the defense is bad. And that's kind of, that's really what this comes down to. Their entire cornerback room right now is either injured or awful. I mean, Tyree Stevenson was a second-round pick a few years ago, played pretty well, started developing pretty well, and then that Washington game happened with the Hail Mary, and things just went completely off the rails. And he has a perfect passer rating against him right now. That's how bad he's been. Nashawn Wright is another player. I mean, you guys are very familiar with him in Dallas. Had a great camp, a lot of hype behind him. He gets into the regular season. Outside of the pick six, he's been pretty bad too. Jalen Johnson's probably gone for the year. Kyler Gordon hasn't played. He's had a reoccurring hamstring injury. So it's like you're looking at this secondary especially, and it's like, okay, well, at least they've invested a lot on the defensive line. And then you look at the defensive line, it's like, okay, well, they had a really good first half in Minnesota, and then they haven't done anything since. They can't stop the run. They can't get after the quarterback. Montez Sweat is being paid an asinine amount of money to do absolutely nothing right now. Dio Adengbo is a solid player, but he's not a true, put your hand in the dirt and be a true pass rusher. Like, that's just not his game. So they don't have any horses up front right now that could get after the quarterback. So unless something magically happens, it's like this offense is probably going to have to score 40 points. It's going to be another shootout like it was with the Cowboys last week against the Giants. And I think that's truly the only way that they can win this game. And I think the biggest issue right now for this offense is it's the self-inflicted injuries the self-inflicted wounds over and over and over. It's like they'll get a good drive going, and then all of a sudden it's penalty after penalty. It's a holding penalty, and then it's a legal block in the back or a chop block, and all of a sudden you're looking it up, and it's like there's second and 35, and it's like, okay, well, this drive went from being in the opponent's territory at the 30-yard line to all of a sudden they're back in their own territory, and the drive's over with. So I think that there's just so much going wrong right now that the offense is going to have to be damn near perfect in order for them to even have a chance in this game.
I'm really interested to get a viewpoint of the Bears through this game and of the Cowboys defense. I'm interested to watch the Cowboys and Bears, obviously, but even the Giants, because what Russell Wilson did last week was, I mean, I don't think anybody, anticipated on any level. But so, I mean, it would make me feel better if on Sunday night against Kansas City, there was some semblance of that, right? There, maybe Russ has found the fountain of youth. And similarly, the other end of the spectrum, I suppose, if Caleb Williams were to all of a sudden have it figured out, I mean, then we really would kind of establish that this Cowboys defense is kind of the magic elixir for teams or for quarterbacks at least. And therefore we could, we're still amassing data, obviously, as the NFL is concerned this year. And we're figuring out what properly represents, X, Y, and Z. I will say, like, I'm terrified of that from a Cowboys slant. I really, you mentioned a perfect pass rating. That's what Trayvon Diggs surrendered last week. And so I think Caleb Williams is a better quarterback than I think Russell Wilson is these days, which
fingers crossed. I mean,
I know how that, we all kind of hate our teams. It's a matter of like, I hate mine more than you hate yours, sort of thing. But that's like on paper, this Bears team looks to be very potent, and they have an offensive coordinator who has had the Cowboys number, or an offensive play caller, I should say, who's had the Cowboys number as an offensive coordinator twice in the last 2 years. And so and Ben Johnson, and this was more of a Lions thing, really took the Lions Cowboys game last year personally, based on the reporting ineligible thing that happened 2 years ago now. So I mean, some people like beating up on certain teams, and I kind of feel like this is a specific moment where people are a little bit high on the Cowboys after that crazy win and Brandon Aubrey. Like, this could be the moment where they're the dunce and they're in the dunk tank for Chicago to have their moment in the sun.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely could happen, and especially this early in the season. Obviously, no book is going to be written on any team. I would say, though, for as much success as Ben Johnson has had against the Cowboys, I think the X factor here is the fact that Matt Eberflus had a lot of success against Ben Johnson's offense, on top of the fact that obviously Caleb Williams was the quarterback, last year, so he's going to know how to attack him. And for as much improvement as we've seen in certain areas from Caleb Williams, especially in the pocket in week 2, right? Obviously, week 1 started off okay, really went downhill. I thought his pocket presence as a whole, his awareness, being able to get the ball out, play on time, was a lot better last week. Eberflus knows all of his issues. Like, this doesn't just magically go away with 8 months of Ben Johnson and 2 regular season games. So I think that's kind of another factor in all this. But it's funny you brought up something that I was thinking about earlier when I was watching the Vikings game on Sunday, with the whole, like, you kind of see, you want to see the semblance of the Giants offense, performing well against Kansas City. And it was like the exact opposite feeling, as a Bears fan, because you're sitting there watching. It's like JJ McCarthy looked awful for 3 quarters. Right. He comes out and he has that crazy 4th quarter. You think, okay, maybe he figured it out. And then you watch him against Atlanta, and it's like, oh my God, like, this defense really is that bad. And then you can kind of go and look at the same thing. Like, Detroit really struggles against Green Bay in week 1, their offense. And then John Morton comes out and hangs 52 on their defense. So it's like, I'm going through the exact opposite. Like, I'm looking at the confirmation right now saying, okay, we know that this defense is in rough shape. Hopefully for you, it'll pan out a little bit better. But I just thought it was funny that you're about to go through the evaluation process that they've seen the last 2 weeks, and I'm like, oh no, this is not pointing in the right direction.
Yeah, you're always hoping the transitive property benefits you. You know what I'm saying? Like that, you're looking for that side of confirmation. Because again, like to just reiterate the entire thing, if the Giants were to look horrible on offense on Sunday night, and like if Chicago were to blast the Cowboys' doors off, and then the Giants were to look horrible, that would be like the worst possible day. Which steers me to my last question. Opposite ends of the spectrum. What would be the like, we're floating all of a sudden sort of result beyond obviously winning? And what would be the, wow, this is the bad place, and again, all things within the realm of practicality and possibility, actual things that could happen, obviously winning 50-0, losing 50-0, those types of things. But I imagine the negative side would be Matt Eberflus like dominating and just feeling like, well, that just stinks in every way.
So, from my perspective, regardless of what Matt Eberflus does, I mean, we all know he's a better a better defensive coordinator than he is going to be a head coach, right? Like, I think a worst case scenario for the Bears is that they come out and their offense looks exactly the same as they have over the last 2 weeks. And if that happens, considering, Dallas's first 2 weeks of the season defensively, the fact that they're not going to get after the quarterback nearly as much as what Detroit did, and especially what Minnesota did. If the offense looks the same and Caleb Williams looks the same, there's going to be all-out panic. Because and again, honestly, like, a lot of Bears fans are kind of thinking, I don't think a lot of Bears fans are thinking, yes, they're going to win the game, but I think in a lot of ways, a lot of them, including myself, are thinking, at least try to string some semblance of offensive success, right? I think, kind of going to the other end of the spectrum here, I don't know that there's going to be one thing that I don't know that there's going to be anything that can happen that Bears fans would be like, all right, season's back on. I think at this point in time, you're kind of looking at it saying, okay, best case scenario, you get to 2-2 going in that week 5 bye. You get some things figured out. You're still in contention at that point. Hopefully things kind of go from there. But I think a more balanced approach realistically is saying, okay, like at this point in time, let's focus on the offense. The defense can be reworked in one off season, whatever the case may be. The biggest focus right now has to be you hired an offensive mind. You've got to get the quarterback situation figured out. Caleb Williams was the number 1 overall pick a year ago. Like, that has got to get figured out. If anything gets figured out this year, it's got to be the offense. Start giving some of the younger guys, Colson Loveland, a chance, Luther Burden a chance, whatever the case may be. Like, that is the top priority. So I think Bears fans would feel a lot better, even if they lose. Like I said,
Right.
if it's a 41-38 game and they lose, I think a lot of Bears fans will feel better knowing that the offense is at least on track versus, if they get blown out again, or the offense, like if it's a defensive battle and the offense looks how it has the last few weeks, I think a lot of people are going to be like, all right, we're out.
Yeah, see, like the transitive property again, like for me, beyond the Cowboys losing, it would stink if the Bears looked great because, to your point, these other defenses have really shut them down. And I think, like, to add to your worst case scenario, it would be kind of bad for both of us. But if the Cowboys were to mitigate Caleb Williams and then Russell were to get like destroyed on Sunday night, because then it would be a matter of like, holy crap, like, yeah, the Cowboys are the magic elixir, and even we couldn't beat even them. You know what I mean? Like, Caleb couldn't even handle that. That would be a tough scene. Well, I hope that see, like, again, you don't want the mirage, but you do want the hope. Like I thought last week, if the Giants had lost the way they did, but it had been Jackson Dart at quarterback, I think Giants fans are walking around town feeling incredible right now.
Yeah.
But it feels so meaningless because it what does it matter that Russell Wilson did this? You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't benefit anybody long term. Aaron, I mentioned you are a variety of places, so plug away everywhere you are talking Chicago Bears and anything else, please.
Yeah, I've actually kind of pared down a little bit. So I do one column every 2 weeks for the Bear Report, and then I'm primarily just doing Windy City Gridiron. Just trying to enjoy life. We moved out to Colorado last year, and it's like I'm sitting outside right now, and it's 59 degrees. So I'm I'm really enjoying being out, being outside and trying to do more. So that's kind of my thing, man. You're actually the first podcast that I've done in like 6 or 7 months. So,
hey, I mean, that's what it's all about is finding your equilibrium and and establishing the rhythm that works for you. The Colorado weather and lifestyle fits a lot of people. One of my good friends moved out there a couple of years ago as well. So enjoy the 59 degrees. As we leave, what's since maybe your horizons have expanded a little bit beyond football, what's a Netflix show or something for us to dig into that's got your attention?
Oh man. So the thing is I haven't actually turned on, this is bad, I haven't really turned on TV outside of football in a while. So we're really, really involved with, we do a lot of animal rescue.
Okay.
And then on top of that, I've been trying to focus more on in IT. So I've been trying to focus more on kind of like, a lot of the cloud stuff. So that's been the primary focus. But to be completely honest with you, man, like we're right in the middle of kitten season right now, and we are on the precipice. This is our 3rd year doing it. We're on the precipice of breaking the 100 kitten mark. In that time. So I know that sounds kind of boring and it sounds kind of weird, but that's kind of been our thing. So that's what takes up a lot of our time. So
I think that's strong. I don't think that sounds boring at all. I have 2 dogs personally, but that's noble work, and the world needs it. Aaron, you're the man. Appreciate it, and I wish you health, wealth, and happiness, but like a really miserable sports Sunday.
Likewise, man. I need it for my mental health. So
appreciate it, man. This will go out